Welcome back, viewers. Thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Patrick Tawia Matope, and on this channel, I do talk to you about social work content, and I do deliver content on social work on anything to do with social work. However, it's most related to children and families because that's my practice area, really. That's my bread and butter. And if you haven't subscribed to this channel, please do subscribe. Consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell so that when I post, you'll be the first person to know. And in this video today, I'm just going to talk to you, or I'm giving you 7 key points around, you being a foster carer, or 7 key things to consider in terms of you being a foster carer, or the 7 steps that you will take for you to be a foster carer, really. So if you are considering to be a foster carer, I think it's quite a rewarding, thing for you to be a foster carer and to consider that, because you are making a huge difference to the, vulnerable children's lives. So I put my heads off to people who are doing fostering, just like I put my heads off to everybody who is in a helping profession. It's equally the same with foster carers, basically. So point number 1 is the initial inquiry or meeting. Within this, if you remember, most fostering agencies or most local authorities, they do have live events that go on almost every year where they do recruit foster carers. So it's important for you to be attending one of these, where you'll get information about what's required for you to be a foster carer. But I'm just going to be going through those 7 steps today. But remember, you need to be attending such events for you to gain more information about how you can actually be a foster carer. So the initial inquiry or meeting, the aim of that meeting or that inquiry is to make sure that it gives you peace of mind. You are able to gain more information about how to be a foster carer, for example, and it will also you also be taking all the steps that you need to be undertaking for you to be a fully fledged foster carer within that initial inquiry meeting. So number 1 is that initial inquiry and meeting. Once you have had an initial chat with a social worker over the phone, it can be over the phone or it can be in person. Usually the supervised social worker will establish if it's the right time for you to be fostering. Because remember, you might want to be foster carer, but it may not necessarily be the right time in terms of what's going on for you, in terms of maybe your health, or in terms of maybe your own caring responsibilities that you have at home. So you need, they will need to also assess and consider whether this is the right time for you to be fostering as well, in as much as you would want to be, but there are practical considerations that needs to be made, in that initial meeting. So that initial meeting is, to kind of gauge and see whether you're actually ready to be doing this. So it's an opportunity for the fostering agents, for the local authority, supervising social worker, to be able to know you a little bit better about you. They will also ask you a few questions in terms of, why you are being motivated to be a foster carer, for example. They will also explain to you what it involves to be a foster carer, and the different type of placements which will be available, whether you want to be a short-term placement provider or a long-term placement provider, or only an out-of-hours placement provider, whatever it is. But they will explain to you the next steps that you'll be taking on your journey, within fostering, really. And once they determine that you're actually a good fit to be a foster carer, from that initial meeting, then they will require you to make an application. But remember, I spoke about some questions that they may ask you, which may involve including your history with the police, your history with the local authorities, your history of being known as a child, as a child who was in care, all those kind of things. There's a reason why they're asking that information, because they are trying to see whether you're actually a good fit for the role that you want to take, because it's quite a demanding role, really. So they need to know that you're actually a good fit for that role. Stage number 2 is where you make your application. Your fostering, advisor or fostering social worker, will write a report with the information that you share in the initial meeting. This will be considered by a manager who will decide on the next steps, or sometimes If it's a fostering advisor that will have had that initial meeting with you, they will write the report, which will go to a supervising social worker who will consider what will be the next steps. And if appropriate, then they will invite you to make an application to be a foster carer. This means that you are completing the application form, standard application form, which you need to complete all the information, your name, date of birth, your home address, all the address that you've lived in the past 5-10 years, all that information, they need to be completing that information as well. And for you to give consent, written consent, for them to obtain what we call statutory checks with other local authorities where you have lived, as well as references from the people that you have given as referees. So that's step number 2. Step number 3 is the fostering assessment that needs to be done by a social worker. The fostering assessment is quite intrusive. That's one thing I'm going to say straight from the get-go. It's quite intrusive because they'll be asking information to do with your mental health, to do with your sexuality, to do with whatever it is that you think somebody, social worker will need to know about you. They will be asking information in that assessment. But it's not to use that information to discriminate against you, but they are trying to assess whether you will qualify to be a foster carer, because it takes a lot for you to be a foster carer. So make sure that when you answer that information, you are answering to the true knowledge of, to the best of your abilities, really. So within this assessment, it helps them to also identify what other skills that you are bringing on board. If you are, from another profession, or if you are working somewhere else. Remember, the fact that you are working doesn't limit you from being a foster carer. There are working foster carers that I know of who are working full-time jobs, but they're also foster carers. So be, open and honest about what's going on for you. If you're not working, be open and honest about, what's going on for you as well. It doesn't necessarily mean that if you're not working, people will look down upon you, then you can't be foster carer. It doesn't work like that. You just need to be open and honest about information you're giving. Remember, if you give false information and it's later found to be false information that you've given, that may disqualify you from fostering, basically. So they will also look at the qualities that you will bring to the role. They also look at the knowledge that you bring to the role, the experience that you bring to the role. If you've had experience of taking care of your sister's child, for example, if you've had experience of taking other people's, taking care of your siblings, children, for example. So you need to talk about all those things that you can bring on board, because remember, just like any other job, this is kind of assessing to see whether you are a good fit for that job or you're a good fit for that role as well. So the social worker will visit your family. They don't visit once, they don't visit twice. Sometimes they visit 4, 5 times, sometimes 6 times, to actually make sure that they gather all the information which they need for the fostering assessment. So this is not done, within a month. Sometimes it's over a couple of months, sometimes it's over a few months, but it can actually take longer depending with the information that people are gathering from other local authorities that you've lived in, or from other referees who may not necessarily be in the country, for example, all those kind of things. So the social worker will need to be doing what we call a fostering assessment. It's an in-depth assessment which will require them to come up with a comprehensive report after that fostering assessment. And then point number 4 is where the social worker will be collecting information during the assessment. Remember, you've given them consent on point number 2 for them to contact other referees and other statutory checks to be done with the police, with DBS, and all those kind of things. With point number 4, they are now collecting information during the assessment. It's information to do with your childhood, your past relationships, traumatic experience that you've experienced in your life, your work history, your health, your family, your personal interests, your faith, your belief systems. This will help them to identify, whether you're actually a good fit. They'll also be trying to find if you've got a support network. They will carry out checks such as, home safety checks. They'll also do pet questionnaire to ask anything to do with pets, if you're keeping pets. They'll also visit family members. It could be your parents, it could be your siblings, it could be your referees. They could visit them as well. And all this information will be detailed in a document which I mentioned earlier on, to say there is a fostering assessment that needs to be done. Then, when you have passed all those checks, when you have passed the assessment stage and the assessment is positive, then they will start to consider you for pre-fostering training. That pre-fostering training will also enable you to know whether what you are embarking on is something that you are willing or ready to do. you will make an informed decision within that pre-fostering training as well. Because some of you might think, oh, I've done all this already. But when you do the pre-fostering training, you might think, I think I'm taking on too much than I can chew here. I'm not going to be proceeding with this. I'm just giving an example. I'm not saying that's what happens, but I'm just giving an example. So during this assessment period, you also attend what we call journey to fostering training, which is offered by most local authorities and some fostering agencies as well. This is a pre-approval course. You haven't been approved, but they are asking you to attend that training so that you can actually make an informed decision about the step that you are taking as a couple or as an individual or as a family, basically. This is designed to help you find out more about fostering, and it's a great opportunity for you to speak to other people who are already fostering, speak to the supervising social worker, ask relevant questions, get a proper real insight into what it is that you are actually getting yourself involved in, really. That's the purpose of that, pre-fostering training, really. And you will also be inducted into the network of other fostering parents within your local community, where you can actually network with others. It may not necessarily be fostering parents from your fostering agents from the local authority, but other fostering agents as well. Because the bottom line is you all need to be singing from the same hymn sheet. You will need that experience. You will need that insight from others who have been doing it for that long period of time as well. So the last, or the sixth point I'm going to be talking about is the references and the checks that needs to be done. So as part of the application process, the fostering agents or the local authority that is assessing your foster care, for your fostering application, will carry out a number of references and checks that they will do. This will include DBS, Disclosure and Barring Service, which was formerly called the CRB. This is checks which are done on anyone who will be working with vulnerable people. It's done for everybody in your household, including, if you're a couple, including children who are above 16 who are still living at home. They will also do some, DBS checks, including other children who have left home but who will be visiting the family home. They will also do DBS checks on them. They will also do what we call local authority residence checks for the last 10 years. All the local authorities that you've lived for the last 10 years, or some even check back to 15 years or 20 years, they will need to do checks to see whether you were known to those local authorities as a parent who had children's child protection plans or child in need plans, or what it is, or you yourself, you were known to the local authority as a child in care. All those, they need to check all those things. It doesn't necessarily mean that it will disqualify you, but it's information which they will use for the assessment to see whether you're going to be a good fit or whether there is scope for any training that you may need to be attending for you to be a fully fledged foster carer. They will also do checks with all your ex-partners with your permission. They'll also require a medical report from your GP. They'll also require written references from the last 3 personal referees or from your employers, educational references for any children in your family home. They'll also require references from your employers or other foster care agents that you've fostered with before. They'll also do inquiries with the local authorities, like I mentioned earlier on, in terms of child protection records, vulnerable adults that you've worked with before, where you volunteered and all those kind of things. They'll also do what we call a pet risk assessment or a pet questionnaire check or a pet safety check that will do if you're also keeping pets in your family home. And then the last step is, once the assessment has been done, is positive, then is the approval. But the approval, you need to go through, once the paperwork is completed, you need to go through what we call the fostering panel. And they will help you, they will prepare you for the fostering panel, where you'll be attending, you will ask, some few questions, and then they will, approve you as a foster carer. This is a group of, fostering professionals who are just sitting on a panel and asking you, questions, and then they will make a recommendation regarding your approval as a foster carer. And then obviously the director of the local authority or the director of that fostering agency may actually approve you to be a foster carer. And then you can actually start to make a difference to vulnerable children. So this is the 7 steps that you will require to make if you are considering to be a foster carer. I hope with this information somebody has gained some insight, and I just want to thank you all for tuning in. If you haven't subscribed, please do subscribe, hit the notification bell so that when I post, you are the first person to know. Thank you so much.